Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
You're coming through.
Cool, perfect. My name is David Osei. I'm a construction manager for Red Brick LMD. I'm also on the board of the directors for Washington Building Congress. Wanted to kind of introduce the programming. The inception of this program was a lunch and learn speaker series where we can present new and innovative ways of thinking about DEI. Last year, we had a successful program where we brought in different individuals from different industries that kind of highlight some of their experiences within their industry, how they tackle DEI issues within their industry, and any kind of lessons learned they can impart onto us on how we can approach our DEI initiatives. It was pretty successful, so we decided to bring it back this year. And for our first episode, we have Paul Kyoko, who is a Wall Street native. He currently works on Wall Street, and he has quite a lot of experience when it comes to DE&I, and he wanted to impart some of his lessons learned through his programming to WBC. So I hope you guys enjoy the programming, and feel free to ask any questions that you may have. So the title for this episode is Diversity on Wall Street, and for episode 2, we're going to bring in another set of individuals, one that's focused more on biomechanics and hardcore engineering, Dr. Eric Bergoris, and then also Ms. Dana Hall from Emerson, who's going to focus more on equity work and their representation within DE&I. So thank you so much for being able to call into this lunch and learn. We really appreciate your thoughts, effort, and also your ability to kind of want to be more progressive and thinking about how you fit within the grand mold of diversity, equity, and inclusion. With all that being said, I hope I didn't ramble on too much. I'm going to pass it on to Kyoko.
Thank you very much, Dave. And thank you for inviting me to participate in this Lunch and Learn series. Can you hear me? Am I coming out loud and clear?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. So, as David said, hold on. Here we go. My name is Paul Kyoko, and I'm an AVP at Blackstone in the Blackstone Credit Middle Office Operations team. I reside in New York City, and I'm originally from Nairobi, Kenya. Like David, I attended Carnegie Mellon for a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. Some of my hobbies are soccer, playing soccer and watching soccer. I love trivia, all kinds of trivia. I take it as even if you don't know the answer, you'll learn something. And the best part is when you find out you know something, but you don't know why you know it. So that's always a fun part of trivia, you know. And, I like chess and stand-up comedy. And some of my favorite podcasts are the All In podcast and Wait, Don't Tell Me on NPR. So that's just like a quick intro for me. And on today's topic of diversity on Wall Street, before even getting into my individual experience, I wanted to take a step back and give everyone an idea of the snapshot of the workforce. And that just kind of gives context into kind of what my individual experience is like and the experience that many other people have as well. And so as you see here, a snapshot of the workforce from the employment from the EEOC around 2018. Now, from 2018-19, I doubt it's changed much, but in terms of trend and data quality, labor statistics from 2020 forward kind of has been skewed by COVID and the recovery. So take it as 2018, 2019 is kind of like a good barometer of the kind of the workforce without all the noise of what we've all been going through in the past few years. So given that, we can see that diversity on Wall Street is extremely lacking with, a majority of the professionals in the workforce being white and all the minority groups kind of straddling double digits. And, this is across all the different banks, but, this is not all the banks in terms of like how large the financial services industry is, but these are just some of the major players. And on average, Black people in the Wall Street workforce make up around 7% on average. So that was just a snapshot of the professional level. And when you say professional level, that's people who are in the business, people who are part of the value stream that you would consider, what's being talked about in the, what's called the quarterly calls. But then throughout the whole, companies employ, many kinds of people in the workforce who are contractors via third party, third party providers. So this is just a snapshot of the professional level, which I think is, a focus kind of where a lot of the diversity is needed. And in context, there are 3.6 million workers in finance and insurance companies with at least 100 employees. And in terms of just that being the total number, diversity decreases as you move further up the corporate ladder. Like this is a given. And it kind of goes to show how hard it would be to even change the current status quo, because the people who make the decisions are up the corporate ladder and they really need to want to, make the change, feel involved, feel like it adds value. And that it's already harder as it is. It's just the current snapshot. And that's why you have to be actively engaged and make kind of efforts towards it. So as you go up the ladder, front and mid-level, Black employees in finance around 6.9%, and all the way at senior and executive levels, less than 4% managers identify as Black. Now, that's just a snapshot of diversity on Wall Street. Now, why do I kind of give that context or put that two together? My individual experience kind of validates a lot of the numbers. Numbers are just numbers, but to really connect to kind of what those numbers mean, there needs to be examples. You have to kind of think about it holistically and know that there are people behind these numbers. There are experience behind these numbers. And if you want to change these numbers, you need to know what the experience is like and kind of what the people involved and who is going to be impacted by any kind of change that is going to be impacted. So mention professional level and mention kind of like senior executive level. Now, my individual experience, so I'm currently at Blackstone. I've been here since June, but my previous experience was all at Credit Suisse. I did 5 years in technology and 1 year in a finance role. And I have so many stories as a professional would like throughout my experience. And one that I found very unique that I'd like to share with you guys to kind of give a little context is I joined the Credit Suisse technology program in the Raleigh office in 2017. And when I joined, I spoke with my mom. I was moving from Jersey to Raleigh, and she imparted on me, always be kind and nice to even the workers at the front office, the people who are security guards checking in. And she'd always make this joke, I was once a security guard. So this is, something I just, took in jest with my mom's like making, I was once a security guard. But she imparted that on me and I always kind of carry that with me. Now, in 2016 and 2017, Credit Suisse had a Black CEO. His name was Tijan Tiam. Now, joining the organization at this time was kind of very unique because this is the first bulge bracket bank to have a Black CEO. Given that, you can kind of see a senior executive, somebody who's in charge of a global investment bank. He's born in Côte d'Ivoire. He's an African man, very accomplished, and he's at the helm. That was something that was very inspiring, something that really gave me quite a lot of, motivation, and kind of see that you kind of belong. There are people, there is some representation. And so joining at that time was very interesting. And I'm sure, everybody who joined at that time was kind of like something that was very unique about Credit Suisse. There was a topic was always in the news. So I remember I was in the Raleigh office and I was coming to visit and work in the New York office. And I needed to apply for badge access to come into the New York office. And this was like the thing for me anytime at CS. There's not that many people with the last name Kyoko. There's only me. So I go ahead and go to the portal for applying for access to the New York office. I put in my last name, and lo and behold, there's two names that pop up. My name with all the buildings that I have access to, and my mom's name, and it shows has access to this building in the year 2003. And it was just something that was really funny, validated that, my mom was like, yeah, I was a security guard at Credit Suisse. and, it was just something that I was like, oh, wow. So given that juxtaposition where knowing my mom was a security guard at a Wall Street bank and having that context, and the CEO of the bank is also a Black man. So that had had an impact on me in terms of how I saw diversity on Wall Street. I think, as I started my career, I guess it was an interesting place to start in a bank with a Black CEO. So that story in particular, I found, always resonates with me, where my mom told me she was a security guard and the CEO was a Black businessman.
Hey, Kyoko, I have one question for you.
Yeah.
So you touched on something kind of important earlier. Within our industry, especially within the field side of construction, there's a lack of diversity when it comes to women on the field. It's growing, but not at the rate that anybody would want it to be, / where we want to see it in the future. What are some of the tricks and some of the things that Credit Suisse / Blackstone do to kind of pull more diverse people into their doors?
Great. That stems from, thank you for that question. Good question. I always love it when a question and I have like an example answer that kind of makes sense in ways that can be applicable. So I know when I joined Credit Suisse, they came to our campus to recruit, and I was part of NSBE, which is National Society of Black Engineers. And they came, and they were one of the few organizations that came specifically for the NSBE mixer, So all the big orgs came to recruit. Sometimes they didn't send anybody in particular for NSBE. And I remember I was like a senator, I was in the exec and worked. The exec board always wanted to bring companies to come and have a specific mixer for NSBE students, and these companies can get more one-on-one time with candidates, because when we had the opportunities conference where all the students were going for the employment conference, there wasn't that one-on-one time, and it becomes hectic. So something that I know Credit Suisse did, I've not been involved with any of Blackstone's efforts yet. I did attend something that they had earlier this year when they had the CEO of Harlem Black Children's School come speak. So I know Blackstone's already, there are people who are engaged in kind of getting involved. But I'd say to answer kind of like your question about, let's say, how would you apply getting and creating that pipeline? I'd say organizations need to deliberately go to where these people are. So if it's women in construction and industry, I know there's Society of Women Engineers. They probably have their own, they have the people you're looking for. They have their names, they have the people who have the interests. So I would say organizations getting more involved with every school that's around and ask them, do you guys have Society of Women Engineers? We want to come speak with you guys. That I think is very deliberate from an organization, and in earnest. The more I went back every year on behalf of Credit Suisse to recruit at the NSBE Mixer and the General Opportunities Conference. So those are things that I think any organization can do. So in your industry, it's kind of go to the people where they are and just create that relationship, because then you kind of create the pipeline. Go back every year. You might not get the candidates this year, but you just need one or two candidates to get involved, and they will, grease the pipeline and kind of like really create the change that you need. So that's to answer your question. In terms of tying into the story of the CEO of Credit Suisse being Black and my mom having worked as a security guard, a lot in the industry, I'd say a lot of the jobs of, I'd say, security, chef, and the day-to-day operations that are like contractor kind of jobs would always be minorities. But the business side, the professional level, and senior executives, it all decreases, as you go up the stack. And so to me, it was very interesting when there's a connection from the top to the bottom, which is like, oh, wow. Either way, where you are in the organization, you can see, yourself as part of the whole organization. I'm not part of the organization up till this part. There's a cap. There's some European banks, well, it's like, which, if you're not from that country, it's not like a written rule or anything, but it's like a known thing where the levels you can reach are very limited if you're not from that country. Let alone, this is not even about diversity or in terms of like race and whatnot, but that's an aside. But those kinds of things are things that, kind of narrow down the possibility. The fact that there's a possibility to see yourself anywhere in the organization, I think, is important. And that's why I find that experience, very unique. Now, if I was to touch on a little bit of specifics in my career, even on the technology side, I know there weren't that many, Black people in my technology analyst class, but I do remember any interns who came through, I always made sure to reach out, have a coffee with them, encourage them, tell them which parts of the organization, if you see yourself as a developer, back end or front end, kind of really get them thinking about their careers and kind of getting them started. And I do remember an intern who, he was doing computer science at his school, and first thing I asked him is like, are you part of NSBE? And he wasn't part of NSBE at his school. And I was like, you got to join NSBE. Like, this is where you as a Black engineer, the organization in itself there'll be resources, there'll be people, and more, your network will grow. And after that summer, he joined NSBE. And then I saw like a LinkedIn update from him. He was like VP of something for NSBE. I was like very happy, that he kind of followed through. And then he got an internship. And it's always good when you can see impact with just like sharing information and kind of going into it. And that kind of frames my next kind of thing to unpack, which is like going forward in my career.
Before that, I got one more question for you. Sorry.
Yeah.
So another kind of major issue that our industry specifically struggles with is this idea of like tokenism. It's not unique to our industry, but we also still kind of suffer through it. A lot of minority workers tend to feel, like you were mentioning, when at top it's all like it looks one way, they kind of tend to feel tokenized, where they're the only minority person there. How have you been able to sort of push back on the status quo and kind of like navigate through tokenism throughout your career?
Oof, well, that's a tough one, but in the sense of it's very real. So it's how have I think you first things first, you just have to accept it, in the sense of there is a self-awareness that you need to kind of have, that yeah, you are token in the sense of like you're a minority in this space now, but now the pressures of that, in terms of imposter syndrome, kind of always having, those are things that I think I'll say this is from my experience and what I think would be valuable for everyone who's in that space would be reach out. Uh, Reach out to other people. If you're the only one, I think, I'm not sure, it could be an individual experience where you are the only one and there's no one else to reach out to or really kind of resonate with. But in instances, you'll always find at least one other person. And I think reaching out and getting that validation that, yeah, I'm not the only one experiencing it, kind of makes you a little more self-aware and make you okay with being token and in that position. And I think then it gives you a little more of like leeway to go forward, kind of like, okay, I've accepted it. This is what it is. Now you own your role then, kind of like this is what it tells you, it kind of shows you what to do next, really gives you you'll start to think about, not about what's limiting you, but where can I add value? Where can I, show that, diversity in skills, opinions, and your backgrounds kind of will improve the quality of work. So I would say finding other people in the organization that you're in, and if not in the organization, I would say in the same industry. Like there's a lot of I know in New York, there's urban Black professionals. There's organizations of people who can help validate your experience. And I think once you have that, then you can, I think, go forward and really carry that impact and be a little more impactful, because that is the biggest thing that stymies being like the tokenism, when it crushes somebody and you kind of like stay within your shell where you're thinking imposter syndrome, I can't do this, I can't do that. I find it's hard for organizations to kind of outwardly control for that, in terms of no matter how many mentors you can have, no matter how many mentorship programs and kind of things that are like, okay, do this, do that, go to these trainings, participate in this and that. You can do a lot of that, but it's up to the individual, and as well as I think other people who are in the organization who might resonate with how that person feels, to really kind of get them going by just accepting that this is it. You are token. So what? Go ahead. You're here. Do your thing. So that's what I'd say. It's kind of like a way to, at least that's how I look at that. And, sometimes all the programming that could be created, it doesn't mean remove the programming or anything. The programming actually kind of fosters those natural relationships and really gets that idea of tokenism out of the way for what prevents people from really achieving and really like adding value and creating that pipeline and making the change they want to make.
Sense. Great answer.
Yeah. And so to kind of go forward into what I was how I think about things and going forward in my career, I think, you always got to remain engaged. And I find it, we're all working, we're all professionals. Sometimes work and life, you could have so many things that are just, you're juggling and going on with 9 spinning plates, but you got to remain engaged. And I'd say you remain engaged by being aware of your responsibilities and asking yourself, how am I actions and what am I doing? Because if you know, apart from maybe being on boards, holding events, and doing programming, that's not the only responsibilities that you might have in terms of increasing diversity and creating impact in your organization and your industry. And so one of the ways to think about yourself and your responsibilities in this frame is gatekeeping. And it's a negative term, but I think of it as it's just like it is what it is. It happens with any group technology, as long as it's something that is funneling and controlling information, or that's gatekeeping. And it happens, but it also is part of life. I'll give two examples of where I see my responsibilities and I know what my responsibilities are in gatekeeping. For example, if I have material non-public information, that my responsibility is to gatekeep that information. That is my legal responsibility. That is my job responsibility. And that is something I understand. And that is something that you have to be able to be aware of. So that's a gatekeeping that's required of me. But the other kind of gatekeeping that's negative that happens in different spaces is, let's say somebody who's a family friend who's like graduating college wants to know about technology and finance, and I just brush them off. I never do. I always try and find some time to have a talk, or tell them, ask me any questions you have and I'll answer them. But you might find yourself, people in situations where you're working, you're spread thin, and you ignore that responsibility, or you kind of just brush it off, or some people would actively not even reply or engage. I'd say to remain engaged and to be, moving the needle forward, you have to be aware of this responsibility for not gatekeeping things that you shouldn't be gatekeeping, like your story, your individual experience, what that is not your, kind of like gatekeeping of things that is part of your role and what you should be executing as part of your legal responsibilities and whatnot. And I think that's something that going forward that I would impart on anyone in their careers, in their spaces. I'm not sure, even in engineering, like gatekeeping happens all the time. I'm not sure if you guys know about the retro encabulator, which is just a great example of how people can use acronyms and all these different things to kind of make it seem as if what they are doing is, inaccessible and can't be shared. But I would encourage you guys to go look up the retro encabulator. It's just engineer using a lot of jargon and it doesn't make sense. It means nothing versus actually, giving and sharing that which you need to share. For example, I don't know if recently a sophomore from Carnegie Mellon reached out to me asking, hey, I don't know what, I'd want to intern and kind of and end up in finance. And I'm like, hey, sure, let's have a call. They asked me questions like, what'd you do? I told them okay, these were my interests during the Employment Opportunities Conference. This is how I got my role. I would say if you want to do the same thing, you should do this. There's no particular classes that could help you do, and so that is not that is something I'd encourage. My responsibility to them was to share that with them, because that's what will create the impact, because they'll go forward, they'll execute, they might not, they'll do as they need, but my responsibility was to kind of share that with them. And I think a lot of D&I goals can be undermined by people just not really getting other people involved when they should. And I'd say the better word for it is stewardship, where you're steward for everything that's expected of you at your role, everything that's expected of you legally, financially, and all the responsibilities you've signed up for in terms of any organizations you're in. And outside of those responsibilities, stewardship is just create an atmosphere where people are comfortable to ask you and know and want to know your story, know that, I'm not just gonna start throwing out acronyms in a way to kind of like just intimidate somebody from wanting to know or kind of growing in their knowledge journey. And so I think stewardship is something that I would say is the responsibility for everyone in DNI. We're a steward of our companies, we're a steward of, the goals that we want. And so to put that together, I would ask the question, are you Frank Reynolds? I'm not sure if you guys watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but there's this meme where someone's trying to help someone. I got you, trying to help them get up, and Danny DeVito's character is like preventing them from helping other people. So with that, I'll leave you with that. Kind of like, are you Frank Reynolds or are you a steward? And happy to take any questions, and thank you for having me.
Looks like Mohammed has a question.
Oh no, I'm just showing some love to my man Paul. That was great.
Thank you, Mo.
Yeah, so I do have a question. You touched on something actually really, really important. One of the, again, I know I'm bringing up a lot of issues with construction. One of the issues that we're currently facing is this dichotomy between age gaps and how a lot of the experienced individuals, when it comes to the trade side and superintendents and people that have seen that, been there, done that, are leaving the industry. And there are not enough young people that are joining, or at least the rate that we're looking for. So that information is not being passed down where it could be very viable to us in the future. How do you recommend we tackle some of these issues of like information passing down and like not gatekeeping?
Thank you. That's a great question. And in terms of, I love it when you have a question and it gets you thinking. I would say in my industry, in my experience, when it comes down to that dichotomy of like older experienced people and younger people, and kind of really connecting the dots and really creating that pipeline of knowledge, there's institutional knowledge, there's experience knowledge that the old heads always have. I would say it is kind of difficult, but in terms of my experience, where I remember when I switched to a front office role, there were older Black MDs who were mentors, and we'd have conversations and, just have a relationship that we built. And I remember them noting to me, kind of telling me the dynamics of the desk, kind of this is what really teaching me. And what one of them noted to me at when in one of these conversations, it was just like, this was during the summer when there were people interning. And I think we were like a few of us, and one of them noted, there was a Black intern on their desk, and I think he either messed up or he didn't understand the desk dynamics. And the managing director, was a mentor, was like, you need to tell him he's rotating on your desk. You did the same thing. So, and in that, somebody also told you. So for the people, in your industry who are a bit older, who have the knowledge and they have the wherewithal on how to navigate the industry, they need to come to the realization that's like, you didn't just learn it. There's no, I'd say, divine, unless, it's not that goes down like PhD level, where it's like I have a conjecture and I'll write a proof for it, where you can own it and claim it's all your knowledge that you've put together. Your experience, so throughout your career, I feel like you gain from others, you learn from others. So the fact that you learn from others and you've learned from other people, you should be willing to do the same for others. So that mismatch will only kind of older people knowledge leaving the industry and younger people not having that wherewithal and to fill the seats and kind of gain that same knowledge. It needs to be kind of like two ways, where the more experienced people need to kind of be aware, like they also were taught that information. They also got that knowledge from other people. But the second thing is, I'd say, for the younger professionals to kind of show a willingness and openness to learn, and that's when it really will connect, when the younger professionals, are, show the willingness to learn from the older professionals and kind of like, hey, I would love to know, and really kind of create that relationship of I'm willing to learn. And I think that that's kind of like what will really create that that synergy, where by the time they're leaving the industry, they've shared that knowledge. And I think that's really how that would happen. Because similarly, in my experience, where the older mentor was like, hey, whoever's interning at your desk, make sure you tell them exactly what they should be doing, because somebody else told you. You didn't come in just like knowing everything. You tell them what I told you, and that's just how you should be with information. So not gatekeeping and being like, oh, why did you go to that person to ask them about something they don't do, versus, hey, when you're rotating at this desk, take a look at this problem first, really understand it, come back, tell me, and then I'll let you know kind of like how to work through it and really build that knowledge base. Because somebody did that for me, I'll do that for them. Yeah, those are my thoughts. So, Vanessa, what's about you? Raise hand.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Hello.
So I'm sitting at my desk listening to this, and I'm really on this webinar or in this group by mistake. So, but I find this extremely interesting. I also work in the industry, the construction industry, and my job is to learn more about SBA, Small Business for Government Contracts. So this is kind of when I saw the whole concept of diversity, not so much on the Wall Street, but this is very quite interesting. The whole diversity on Wall Street is very broad. That is extremely broad. In the sense that, from my perspective anyways, a lot of what needs to happen as far as reaching out to people of color or diversity, in this day and age, that I could see it, needs to happen a little bit earlier than college. Paul, when you mentioned being the only one, that happened, if you think back, that kind of happened way before you got to Wall Street.
Yeah.
That wasn't your first time.
Mm-hmm.
So the concept of reaching out to people from a college perspective is really too late.
Yeah.
It's all about reaching out to younger people, maybe people, and Paul, I love your speech, I love everything, but the word is not older.
Mm-hmm.
It's seasoned or senior.
Got
But
it. Yeah.
long story short,
Mm-hmm.
if you could reach where you are right now, if you could reach some of the high school kids that have the potential to come along, I think that would be that you'd make a greater impact.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like where um, and I think I was listening to someone else talk, and they're talking about how there's self-selection that in groups that happen, where in fact by the time I joined Credit Suisse, I hadn't thought, I wasn't aware, oh, I'm
Right.
working, while some people are like, yeah, but they're in high school, they're in college, they're like, they're already thinking of uh or at least just even aware that I can apply, I can go for it. And I agree with you, like, yeah, high school students, and the earlier people feel that yes, they can be involved and they can go for it in any industry, then I think the more
Yeah.
impact.
I think if young people understood that there is no top ceiling,
Mhm,
that they don't get to a certain level and stop. If they
mhm,
understood that from a very young, very early perspective, then that glass ceiling, or for women, or that that ceiling period just doesn't exist. And it's there's no stopping them. But
mhm,
we come from, of course, we come from a society where, for people of color especially, that ceiling was made very early on. But it's up to us. It's up to us to let the young people know that no longer exists. The
I'd say,
sky's the limit.
mhm. In terms of something else, and that was like a program that I was a part of in terms of switching from technology to finance. Some of the Wall Street banks have started to, there's a lot of, apart from the pressure, but there's active programs. I ended up doing a pivot program within Credit Suisse, which you're trying to solve the idea of a pipeline. And so this is the premise, where another thing about Wall Street that people don't account for is there's high attrition. And this goes into like the labor stats, where not necessarily, people don't spend a lot of their like lifetime careers in the industry the whole time. So because of high attrition, that also does not help the pipeline. And so there's a few banks that have had programs for experienced professionals who are looking to pivot in their careers. And so I did something else called the pivot program internally. Or it wasn't internally, actually. It's just a program that Credit Suisse had. I was one of the internal people. I saw it and I, kind of put my hand up, which took the concept of, hey, you can get somebody with a base of experience in their career and get them involved if they're looking to switch because they're already willing to learn, versus sometimes this is what happens on Wall Street, and this happens across, I'd say, this is not even across, I don't think this is even a diversity thing. A lot of young people come in to Wall Street and they think they want to do it, and then they do 1 year, 2 years of it, and they're like, I want out. you know so if you see people who are 4 years into their professional career, and they're kind of aware of what they want to do, and they want to pivot, it's a little better, it's much better of awareness, like they want to do it, versus somebody straight out of college who's like, they think that it's all the glamour, they get in and they get out. So that's an interesting thing that has been happening with some Wall Street banks. I think I'm not sure in other industries if there's avenues and opportunities to get people who are, if not necessarily early in terms of high school and whatnot, but if you find somebody who has 3-4 years of experience, and in a particular part of construction, but let's say they want to pivot into project planning and project management, or they want to, like, those could be also avenues to kind of maintain the pipeline, because I don't know the attrition rate in the construction industry or any other industries relatively, I'd say, but I know that's something that's interesting. But yeah, happy to unpack that. That's like a very interesting topic.
Perfect. I think that's about it. Anybody else have any last minute questions for Kyoko? If not, thank you so much for being able to call in today. I hope this presentation gave you much feedback and value, and I hope you take the conversations and expand on them as you go through your normal day and your work week. Thank you so much for being able to call in, and have a great rest of the day.
And also, Dave, just to add, as part of just what I said, I'm always open to anyone reaching out and want to unpack or kind of really ask any questions and whatnot. So for anyone who finds value and kind of has any questions they think about later, feel free to reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, and thank you very much.